What would you do if the only road home could kill you? From cliffs that vanish in the clouds, to deserts ruled by armed men, to highways of ice that could crack beneath your feet. These are the world's most dangerous roads. And for the people who travel them, survival is never guaranteed. The road can be a lifeline, but in some parts of the world, it is also a gamble with death. From the mountains of South America to the icy wilderness of Canada, from the conflict zones of Africa to the remote jungles of Burundi, there are roads where every journey is a test of survival. These routes were never meant for comfort. They were carved through mountains, forests, and deserts out of necessity. They connect villages to cities, farmers to markets, and people to the outside world. But for those who travel them, danger lurks at every turn. Landslides, collapsing cliffs, armed groups, reckless drivers, and extreme weather make every trip a story of endurance. We begin in Burundi, one of the smallest countries in Africa, where roads snake through rolling hills and deep valleys. Here, the terrain itself is the enemy. Narrow dirt tracks wind dangerously close to the edges of cliffs, where one wrong move could send a truck tumbling into the abyss. Drivers carry heavy loads of food, fuel, and goods, often far exceeding what the vehicles were designed to handle. In Burundi, the economy depends on these drivers, yet every trip they make could be their last. Villages wait anxiously for supplies, and families wait for fathers, brothers, and sons to return home alive. On these roads, vehicles compete not only with the conditions, but also with each other. Overloaded trucks crawl uphill, belching thick black smoke as engines strain under impossible weight. Buses swerve dangerously close while motorcycles dart in and out of the chaos. Rain turns dust into mud, and mud into a trap that swallows tires whole. When the sky opens up, visibility drops to nothing. Yet drivers must push on, because stopping is not an option. For many, the risk of not arriving is still less than the risk of not going at all. Now, contrast this with the frozen north of Canada, where roads are not carved into mountains but built over ice. The so-called ice roads stretch across frozen lakes and rivers, fragile lifelines that appear in winter and vanish with the thaw. Truckers who drive them know that beneath their wheels lies nothing but thin ice, and below that, freezing water that could kill in minutes. The weight of a single truck can crack the surface, and every creak or groan beneath the tires reminds the driver how fragile their path is. But in the most remote communities of Canada, these ice roads are the only way to bring in food, fuel, and medicine during the long winter months. For the drivers, it is a test of nerve and endurance unlike any other. Meanwhile, in Bolivia, the infamous North Gas Road, known simply as Death Road, has claimed hundreds of lives. It winds through the Andes, with sheer drops of hundreds of meters and no guardrails to stop a vehicle from plunging into the abyss. Fog, rain, and landslides make visibility treacherous, yet buses and trucks still use it, packed with passengers and goods. To locals, this road is a necessary evil. It connects isolated mountain villages to the capital, La Paz. For years, it was the only route, and even though a safer bypass exists today, Death Road has not lost its grip on imagination. It is a symbol of danger, endurance, and the thin line between survival and disaster. And in Mali, danger does not only come from nature, but from people. Armed groups, bandits, and smugglers control vast stretches of desert roads. Drivers risk ambush, robbery, and kidnapping with every journey. Yet trade must go on. Markets depend on goods, and families depend on the income these perilous trips bring. In the blistering heat of the Sahara, drivers battle exhaustion, dehydration, and fear. Every journey is a gamble, with the desert on one side and human threats on the other. From the high mountains to the frozen lakes, from tropical jungles to burning deserts, these are the world's most dangerous roads. Each one tells a story not just of danger, but of human determination, courage, and survival. For the people who travel them, danger is not an obstacle. It is simply part of the road itself. In Burundi, the road is not just a strip of dirt cutting through the hills. It is a heartbeat of survival. Every bag of rice, every jerrycan of fuel, every bundle of clothing has to move across these fragile tracks. The villages scattered among the hills depend entirely on these connections. Yet for those who drive them, each journey is a daily wager with fate. The trucks are often decades old, held together with wires, welding, and prayers. Their brakes screech, Their tires are worn smooth, and their engines wheeze under impossible weight. When a driver sits behind the wheel, he knows that if the brakes fail on a downhill slope, there is no second chance. A single mistake could send the vehicle spiraling into the ravines below. And yet, men climb into these machines day after day, because the risk of the road is still less than the risk of poverty waiting at home. Passengers, too, are part of the story. Buses and minibuses cram far beyond capacity, with people squeezed shoulder to shoulder, children sitting on laps, and bags tied to the roof. For them, comfort is a luxury they cannot afford. Reaching their destination is all that matters. And so they endure hours of jolting rides, the bus swaying dangerously as it hugs the mountain curves. With every turn, silence falls inside the bus, as if everyone is holding their breath, waiting for the tires to grip just enough to keep them alive. Rain is the greatest enemy of all. When it pours, the roads dissolve. Dust turns into a thick red mud that clings to tires and refuses to let go. Trucks sink axle deep, their wheels spinning helplessly, while passengers climb out to push, slipping and falling in the muck. Sometimes whole convoys are stranded for days, men sleeping inside their vehicles, women lighting fires by the roadside, waiting for the sun to dry the earth just enough to move again. And yet, despite the danger, the road is always full. Children walk miles barefoot to reach schools. Farmers carry heavy sacks of produce on their heads to sell in the markets. Women balance baskets filled with bananas, charcoal, or cassava, moving along the narrow edges of the road, stepping aside quickly when a truck barrels past. These roads are not just for vehicles. They are lifelines for every villager, every farmer, every family struggling to survive. What makes the roads even more treacherous is their isolation. If a truck crashes or a bus overturns, help is often hours away, sometimes days. There are no emergency services waiting at the corner, no tow trucks ready to pull a vehicle from the ditch. In most cases, it is the villagers themselves who rush to help, pulling out survivors with bare hands, carrying the injured down the hill, or lighting fires at night to signal for help. The men and women who travel these routes know the risks intimately. They have seen neighbors vanish, trucks swallowed by landslides, lives cut short in an instant. And yet tomorrow, they will take the same path again, because there is no other choice. The road is merciless, but it is also essential. Without it, villages would starve, markets would collapse, and families would be cut off from the rest of the country. Burundi's roads reveal a hard truth. Sometimes survival itself is a dangerous journey. And for those who must walk, ride, or drive these paths, danger is not something to avoid. It is something to live with every single day. High in the Andes Mountains of Bolivia lies one of the most feared routes in the world, the North Yungas Road. Locals simply call it El Camino de la Muerte, the Road of Death. Even its name carries a weight of warning, whispered with respect by those who have driven it, and with dread by those who have lost loved ones upon it. The road clings to the mountainside like a scar, winding and twisting through clouds, waterfalls, and cliffs that plunge hundreds of meters into the jungle below. It stretches for about 60 kilometers, connecting the capital city, La Paz, with the Yungas region, a fertile but isolated area where coffee, fruits, and coca leaves are grown. For years, this was the only route between the two, and for thousands of farmers, traders, and travelers, it was an unavoidable nightmare. At its narrowest points, the death road is no wider than 3 meters, barely enough for a single vehicle, let alone two. Yet buses, trucks, and cars still squeeze past one another, their wheels skimming the very edge where ground disappears into empty air. There are no guardrails, no protective barriers, nothing to stop a vehicle from slipping into the abyss. And once it goes over the edge, there is no coming back. Rain makes the road slick, turning dust into mud and covering it with slimy film that tires struggle to grip. Fog rolls in suddenly, so thick that drivers can barely see a meter ahead, making blind corners even more deadly. Waterfalls cascade directly on the road in several places, soaking vehicles and drivers alike, eroding the already fragile surface beneath their wheels. Rocks, loosened by the rain, tumble from the cliffs above, a reminder that danger comes not only from below, but from above as well. Drivers here are a different breed. To navigate Death Road takes nerves of steel and years of experience. They lean forward as they drive, eyes scanning every inch of path, hands tight on the wheel. Many perform rituals before setting off. Small offerings of coca leaves or alcohol to Pachamama, the Andean earth goddess, asking for protection on the journey ahead. Every curve is a prayer, every completed trip a victory. Passengers feel the fear even more deeply. Imagine sitting on a bus, pressed against a window, staring down into a vast chasm where clouds drift far beneath you. Every bump, every skid makes hearts race. The silence inside is deafening, as if no one dares to breathe too loudly, afraid it might tip the balance. And yet, every day, buses full of people make this journey because life demands it. Families in the Yungas need markets in La Paz. Goods must move. Students must travel. The road is deadly, but it is also essential. For decades, death road claimed hundreds of lives each year. Entire buses vanish into the abyss. Trucks toppled. Families destroyed in a single instant. Crosses line the roadside as grim reminders, silent markers of those who never reached their destination. Each one tells a story of tragedy, of risk, of a journey that began but never ended. In recent years, a new, safer road has been built, wider and more modern, with protective barriers and better conditions. Yet, even with this alternative, the old death road is still used. Some drivers prefer to avoid tolls or traffic. For others, it remains the only option. And for tourists, it has become a macabre attraction. Mountain bikers from around the world now ride down its treacherous curves, chasing the thrill of danger where so many lives have been lost. The death road is more than just asphalt and mud. It is a symbol, a reminder of how far people will go, how much risk they will endure, simply to stay connected, to trade, to survive. It embodies both human fragility and resilience, the fine line between life and death that is crossed every single day by those who dare to travel it. In West Africa, Mali stretches across vast plains and into the edges of the Sahara Desert. Here, the road is less a built path and more a scar across endless sand. It is not carved into mountains or paved with asphalt, but instead drawn faintly across shifting dunes, vanishing in sandstorms and reappearing only when wheels cut new lines through the dust. To travel these routes is to gamble with the desert itself, a place where the sun burns mercilessly by day and the cold bites deeply by night. But the desert is not the only danger. In Mali, the roads are haunted by armed groups, bandits, rebels, and militias who rule vast stretches of the land. They set up checkpoints, sometimes nothing more than a rope or a pile of rocks across the road, where drivers are forced to stop. For those who carry goods, it is often a moment of terror. Payment may be demanded, trucks may be looted, and sometimes drivers are simply taken and never seen again. Long-haul drivers in Mali speak of journeys filled with silence and dread. Their trucks loaded with grain, fuel, or manufactured goods. They set out across the emptiness, knowing that every horizon might hold danger. Some drive in small convoys, believing that safety lies in numbers. Others travel alone, trusting speed and caution more than company. For all of them, though, the risk is the same. One ambush could end not only their trip, but their lives. And yet, these roads remain essential. Markets in towns and cities depend on the goods that travel across them. Farmers and herders sell their crops and animals only if trucks arrive to carry them away. For villagers living deep in the desert, the arrival of a vehicle loaded with supplies is not just convenient. It can mean survival. Without flour, rice, or fuel, entire communities can be cut off, isolated in a landscape that already offers so little. The desert itself is a brutal adversary. Heat builds to unbearable levels by midday, making engines overheat and tires soften on the scorching ground. Sandstorms sweep across the horizon, blinding drivers and burying tracks within minutes. Sometimes vehicles stall or break down hundreds of kilometers from a nearest settlement, leaving drivers stranded in a wasteland where water is more valuable than gold. Many prepare by carrying extra jerrycans, not just for fuel, but for life itself. What makes Mali's roads even more perilous is the unpredictability of conflict. Today, a road may be open. Tomorrow, it may be controlled by an armed faction or cut off entirely by violence. For those who rely on these routes, every journey must be weighed carefully. Is the profit worth the risk? Is the delivery urgent enough to justify the gamble? And yet time and again, drivers take the chance, because without them, life along these desert edges cannot continue. For passengers, too, the danger is real. Buses wind across the sand, filled with families, students, and workers moving between villages. They travel not because they want to, but because they must, because their futures, their families, or their livelihoods depend on reaching the next town. Every traveler knows the risks, but staying still is often riskier. In Mali, the road is not just a path. It is a battlefield of endurance. Between the scorching desert, the silence of isolation, and the looming threat of armed men, every trip becomes a story of survival. Far from the deserts of Mali and the jungles of Bolivia, another kind of danger exists in the vast, frozen expanse of northern Canada. Here, communities are scattered across a land so remote and inhospitable that for much of the year, there are no usable roads at all. Villages, mining camps, and settlements lie cut off, accessible only by air. But when winter arrives, nature itself creates a fleeting lifeline. Roads carved across frozen lakes and rivers, known simply as the ice roads. These roads appear only in the heart of winter, when temperatures plunge so low that water hardens into ice thick enough to bear the weight of trucks. For a few precious months, what was once an impassable lake or river becomes a vital highway. Across these frozen surfaces, trucks thunder with loads of fuel, building supplies, heavy machinery, and food. Everything a remote community will need until the next winter comes again. But this lifeline is built on fragility. Beneath the tires lies nothing more than a thin sheet of ice, and below that, water so cold it can kill in minutes. Drivers know that every creak, every groan beneath the truck could spell disaster. The rules of the ice roads are strict. Drive too fast, and the vibrations can crack the ice. Drive too heavy, and the surface may give way beneath you. Even stopping in the wrong place for too long can weaken the road. Out here, mistakes are rarely forgiven. Truckers who take these routes are a breed apart. They drive for days across nothing but frozen wilderness, often alone, with nothing but a howl of the wind and the crunch of tires on ice to keep them company. The cold seeps into everything: metal, rubber, flesh, and bone. Engines must run constantly, for if they stop, they may never start again. Sleep is short, eaten away by the need to keep moving, to beat the thaw that will soon reclaim the road. The ice itself is unpredictable. One day it may hold strong, the next it may shift and crack under unseen currents. Drivers speak of moments when the ice moans beneath them, a low, haunting sound that echoes through the cabin and sends a shiver down the spine. Some have seen water seeping through cracks ahead, a deadly warning to turn back before it's too late. Others have not been so lucky, their trucks breaking through and vanishing beneath the surface in seconds. And yet, for all its danger, the ice road is a lifeline. Without it, remote settlements would wither, supplies would vanish, fuel would run out, and families would be cut off for months on end. Every load delivered is not just cargo. It is survival, warmth, and hope. For those who live in these remote corners of Canada, the opening of the ice roads is as important as the coming of spring. When the thaw arrives, the roads disappear as quickly as they came. Ice softens, cracks widen, and the fragile highways vanish back into water. For months afterward, there is no overland access at all. Until the next winter, these communities return to their isolation, waiting once again for the cold to rebuild their only connection to the outside world. Canada's ice roads remind us of a stark truth. Not all roads are built by human hands. Some are gifts of nature, temporary bridges that test the skill, courage, and endurance of those who dare to travel them. And in this frozen land, every trip is a battle not just against distance, but against the very elements of life and death. Around the world, the word road usually brings to mind convenience. Lanes of asphalt, traffic lights, smooth highways designed to connect cities and people with ease. But in places like Burundi, Bolivia, Mali, and northern Canada, the road is something very different. It is not just a path of travel. It is a test of endurance, of courage, and of survival itself. In Burundi, drivers wrestle against mud, rain, and gravity as they navigate crumbling mountain tracks. Their vehicles carry not just goods, but the very survival of villages that would starve without them. Every trip, is a gamble with landslides, failing brakes, and the silence of isolation. In Bolivia, the death road continues to haunt memory and reality. Its narrow, winding edge carved into sheer cliffs has taken countless lives, leaving behind roadside crosses as warnings and memorials. And yet, despite the tragedies, the road lives on, still carrying passengers, goods, and now even thrill seekers who want to stare danger in the face. In Mali, the dangers are of another kind. There, the roads stretch across endless desert, where heat, sand, and the threat of armed groups turn every journey into a confrontation with uncertainty. Drivers carry food and supplies into places where survival depends on what they bring, but their own safety is never guaranteed. A trip across the desert can end in profit or in disappearance. And in Canada, danger comes from beneath. On the ice roads, drivers test their fate against frozen lakes and rivers that groan under the weight of their machines. With every kilometer, they carry the future of remote communities on their backs. Supplies, fuel, and medicine, life itself, rides on fragile highways that will vanish when the thaw returns. Taken together, these roads show us a truth that is easy to forget in the safety of our paved streets. For millions of people, travel is not routine, but survival. The road is not just a connection between one place and another. It is a battlefield between man and nature, between necessity and fear. Each driver, each passenger, each villager who steps onto these paths takes a risk that many of us will never face. And yet they keep going. Because behind every journey lies a reason: family, survival, duty, or hope. It is this determination, this refusal to surrender to the dangers of the road, that makes their stories so powerful. So the next time you step into a car or drive along a safe, well-lit highway, remember the people of Burundi pushing trucks out of mud, the drivers of Bolivia staring down the abyss, the convoys in Mali racing across the desert, and the truckers of Canada who trust their lives to frozen lakes. For them, the road is not just asphalt or ice, it is life itself. Thank you for watching this journey into the world's most dangerous roads. If this story made you think, share your thoughts in the comment below. We'd love to hear them. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful documentaries like this one. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that matter.